Top Gun Maverick and Starship Troopers, two American films that communicate polarizing attitudes on the American perspective of war. Starship Troopers is a parody of fascism and war propaganda following Johnny Rico and his friends from Buenos Aires gradually becoming cogs in the war machine, putting their loyalty to the nation and its politics above their own human individuality to fight a forever war in Clendathu, looking at how many sequels Starship Troopers has made since its release. The film is a deliberate dopamine hit of violence, sex, and human supremacy because Paul Verhoeven wanted to show audiences how risky it is to get freak mode emotions over propaganda that is an easy slip into fascism and unhinged loyalty. Audiences get a crack hit of dopamine on the first watch, but following a second screening, it prompts audiences that, whoa, maybe we should scrutinize recruitment ads and how the media portrays our adversaries. Then Top Gun Maverick is a modern epic of the US Navy, which also simultaneously serves as a great recruitment ad, though it technically isn't, following Tom Cruise Maverick teaching elite pilots to fly a mission impossible over what is supposed to be Iran. The film champions individuality and breaking the rules to make a difference.
Then it's a dogfight.
An F-14 against 5th-gen fighters?
It's not the plane, it's the pilot.
In a way, Top Gun Maverick is basically an anime of the US Navy showing how tight their service members are with each other like a family. They even have a beach episode together in the movie. And this gives audiences the impression that if they enlist into the US Navy, they'll get the same adventure as Tom Maverick. I can make a difference. It's the pilot, not the plane. It's the sailor, not the ship. I can go on talking about all the thematic differences between the two films that touch on propaganda, but beyond the thematic differences, there are two scenes that stand out to me that I want to talk about in this video. The scenes I want to talk about relate specifically to the justification for war. In Starship Troopers' exposition, we see the propaganda of the Federation that humanity and Clendathu are not on good terms. Johnny Rico and his schoolmates dissect a bug corpse while the teacher lectures the students about the threat the bugs pose. And then we get a glimpse of Federation society, so futuristic, so American, in Buenos Aires. Then cue to the scene where Rico is getting kicked out of the mobile infantry camp and is FaceTiming his family, but then it's interrupted by a meteor destroying Buenos Aires, killing his family and millions of others. The Buenos Aires disaster stirs
sorrow, then anger.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
In Geneva, the Federal Council convenes.
We must meet the threat with our valor, our blood, indeed with our very lives, to ensure that human civilization, not insect, dominates this galaxy now and always.
Johnny Rico is then back into the mobile infantry and the war against the bugs kicks off. Johnny Rico seeks vengeance for his family, who were killed by the Clendathu meteor. War, according to Starship Troopers, is justified as an act of vengeance. It takes an attack on the home turf to sway everybody to crave for war. Who wants to just stand there and just accept the tragedy? The people are in bloodlust. They want a response. Similar justifications have been made in real life. This film was made just a few years before 9/11, which followed with the US waging the war on terror throughout the Middle East, with its first step being to invade Iraq. And we have been fighting there for almost 30 years, arguably 40 if you want to count the 90s Gulf War. Then you also have the Confederate States of America attacking Fort Sumter, sparking the US Civil War, and Japan surprise bombing Pearl Harbor. Also in both cases, both sides were not on good terms with each other until an attack sparked the wars against each other. It occurs to me that I mentioned how America is endlessly fighting in the Middle East, especially now. Just like how Starship Troopers ends with the mobile infantry capturing the brain bug, but the war doesn't end. It's a montage of weapons development and inspiration to keep fighting until we win. When do we win? Well, we will win eventually. Just saddle up into the mobile infantry and ride the adventure. Now let's fly to Top Gun Maverick. The US Navy, the anime. What kicks off this film plot is...
The target is an unsanctioned uranium enrichment plant built in violation of a multilateral NATO treaty. The uranium produced there represents a direct threat to our allies in the region. The Pentagon has tasked us with assembling a strike team and taking it out before it becomes fully operational. The plant sits in an underground bunker at the end of this valley.
It's Iran. Top Gun Maverick doesn't have a scene showing the Iranians attacking the continental US or anything like the meteor scene from Starship Troopers. Iran, but not Iran, just exists, but they are violating international agreements with their nuclear program. America is basically depicted as a police force here. Iran, but not Iran, broke international law, so they gotta face consequences. International law must be upheld, and America's gonna do that. Though we have waged wars, but not wars that have violated international law, but we got away with them because we dictate international law. The US Navy wants Tom Maverick and the pilots to carry out the mission, and this conveys the message that it's America's responsibility to maintain order and prevent wars. Maverick and the pilots technically don't go to war. The whole mission is a surgical strike without any follow-up operations. It is a preemptive strike to prevent war. Supposedly, if this rogue nation gets a nuclear weapon, a war could break out. But then, the mission is a success, the film ends, and everybody goes home. Kumbaya. It justifies an act of war to prevent war by having the mission unfold in such a short time frame and nothing else happens afterward. Furthermore, its justification is to uphold international law by preventing the production and use of WMDs. The concept of a preemptive strike is very alluring, since we are so accustomed to the attitude that any and all war is bad and nobody should fire a single shot. What if we could fire a small shot to prevent a bigger war from happening? Just one day, strike a few critical targets, and everybody gets to go home without worrying about a war tomorrow. Why is the country Iran but not Iran? One, it avoids public controversy than if they name-drop Iran and the Ayatollah's nuclear program. If they actually did, audiences start questioning, is Iran our enemy? Should we go to war with Iran? With an unnamed adversary, most audiences can't connect the dots to Iran and go, yay, America defeated the bad guy. The unnamed adversary has no flag nor identity with the opaque masks the Sukhoi 57 pilots wear. Audiences don't have to think that Maverick, Rooster, and Hangman killed a pilot. You can see it with their ejection scenes. You might as well replace the pilot with a robot, or, replace the whole Sukhoi 57s with those advanced Turkish fighter drones. Bottom line, it steers the movie away from being something emotionally complicated, more digestible. This rogue nation can be equated to an obstacle in the way of world peace because they were violating nuclear agreements and posed a threat of almost having a nuclear weapon. They didn't have a nuclear weapon that we knew of. No intelligence confirmed that. And this touches on the rigorous nuclear regulations and agreements which are made and agreed upon by an international consensus which formally, enforces these. But the United States has the power to directly enforce them with such a powerful expeditionary capability. Top Gun Maverick is now prophetic with how the US-Iran war has unfolded. Just last year, the Trump administration kept saying that Iran has almost completed the production of weapons-grade nuclear material, so they ordered penetration strikes on Iran's underground nuclear facilities. Not with Super Hornets, but with B-2 bombers. And Top Gun Maverick said that preemptive strikes are preventing a threat to our allies in the region, preventing war, right? But back in March, we started conducting a large-scale bombing campaign that is still going on today, so those preemptive strikes weren't enough. This has happened in the past too. Just some years prior to the release, in 2017 and 2018, the US struck an airbase and ammunition depots in Syria after Syrian army used chemical weapons on Syrian rebels, which caused widespread destruction, killing both rebels and civilians. Plus, this was also during Trump's first term in office. These movies are basically the polar opposites of each other. I didn't see myself doing a compare and contrast between the two films until this assignment came about. Comparing the movies together makes for a nuanced discussion on American defense politics that go beyond just America. Conflict is arguably a fundamental aspect of humanity. Justification for war, bloodthirsty revenge versus surgical intervention. These movies came from different eras too, which communicate the general consensus of how Americans viewed war. Starship Troopers is basically an American's idea of how war is waged. Everybody's armed with machine guns and charges at the enemy in a primitive manner. Wars are long and hard fought. Top Gun Maverick speaks to a modern attitude of how war is waged, technologically driven and brief. And these are elite adult pilots who are at the best in their line of work, contrasting with Starship Troopers having a bunch of high school graduates with guns they can't handle. Another contrast I see between the two is Starship Troopers heavily leaning on the theme of conformity versus Top Gun Maverick championing individuality. Wish I could elaborate more on this, but I am running out of runtime, so I guess that's a topic for another day. Thanks for watching!